So this is the self-development with tactics book. So today we're going to talk about another TED article, as you can see in the background. The link to the article is always going to be down in the description, so you can read it on your own if I'm just too slow or if I've just, I don't know, because of whatever reason. Please check it out if you want to check it out. And it is all about writing down things. It is a very interesting thing because I very recently talked to a teacher of mine, or an former teacher of mine, about writing things down and also listening to oneself. And I think, and we have just agreed with each other on that point, by writing you can figure out quite a lot of things, because you have to distinctly manage your thoughts. You know, it's not the same thing as talking, even though I think talking to figure things out is also a pretty nice thing, and it can also be very useful. But I think that if you write something down, you really have to be clear about whatever you're thinking about, and you really have to just also make an effort to put it into language and also put it into a form that that's also clear. Or at least, I mean, you can focus on that. Of course, you can also focus on just writing something down and doing something, but this shouldn't be the point. But yeah, so how writing about difficult experiences can help you take back your power, by Sakina Hofler, I'm very sorry. It was published on June 29th, 2020. So it is a fairly new article. And yeah, this post is part of TED's How to Be a Better Human series, each of which contains a piece of helpful advice from people in the TED community. Browse through all the posts here. I have a question for you. Have you ever seen something you wish you could have said Have you ever seen something and you wish you could have said something, but you didn't? Yes, I certainly know that. If it is something good or if it is something bad, I certainly know that. And I have a second question. Has something ever happened to you and you never said anything about it, but you should have? I'm interested in this idea of action, of the difference between seeing, which is the passive act of observing, and the actual act of bearing witness. Bearing witness means writing down something you have seen, something you have heard, something you have experienced. The most important part of bearing witness is writing it down. It's recording. Writing down captures the memory. Writing it down acknowledges its existence. One of the biggest examples we have in history of someone bearing witness is Anne Frank and her diary. She simply wrote down what was happening to her family and about her confinement, and in doing so, we have a very intimate record of this family during one of the worst periods of our world's history. You too can use creative writing to bear witness, and I'm going to walk you through an exercise that I do with a lot of my college students who are future engineers, technicians, plumbers, okay? Basically, they are not creative writers. We use these exercises to unsilence things we have been keeping silent. It is a way of unburdening ourselves. It's a three-step process, or it's 3 simple steps. So we're going to see. The first step is brainstorm and write it down. I give my students a prompt. The prompt is the time when, and I want them to fill that prompt with times they might have experienced something, heard something, or seen something, and they could have said something or intervened, but they didn't. I have them write a list as quickly as possible. I'll give you an example of some things I would write down. The time when a few months after 9/11 and 2 boys dared themselves to touch me, and they did. The time when my sister and I were walking in the city and a guy spat at us and called us terrorists. The time, I think, by the way, she's a woman of color. I do want to point that out. I guess, I'm not sure. But I assume, because I think I've seen a picture down below. But yeah, we're going to see afterwards. The time way back when I went to a very old middle school, and girls a couple of years older than me were often married to men nearly double their age. The time when a friend pulled a gun on me, and the time when I went to a going away luncheon for a coworker, and a big boss questioned my lineage for 45 minutes. There are 3 times when I've seen something and I haven't intervened. For example, the time when I was on a train and I witnessed a father beating his toddler son and I didn't do anything. And the second thing is the many times when I've walked by someone who was homeless and in need and asking me for money, and I walked around them and did not acknowledge their humanity. which is something that always bothers me, by the way. Not in other people, but in myself. I don't like ignoring people. I just also don't like ignoring those people that want to sell something to you, or just quote unquote sell something to you. Most often it is like some donation or some whatever it might be. But the thing is, I think that they're just wasting their time on me. I'm not gonna just donate anything. If I'm donating something, then I'm gonna sit at home, just look through all these charities that are available, and then I'm gonna pick the one that I just wanna pick. And I'm not gonna pick one that is just kind of quote unquote sold to me on the fucking street. So of course they might just get a promotion for that. They might just get whatever, but this is not how I do donations. This is not how I wanna deal with charity. I really don't. And the thing is, like, I would actually have a sign on my fucking hat saying, well, you're wasting your time on me. I wouldn't just in a million years buy anything or just donate with your help. But I mean, of course, getting the information and receiving the knowledge and whatnot, and most often, probably, hopefully, the very detailed information about this charity and about what they're doing and how they're different from others. Most often they are very big ones like Greenpeace and some other ones. At least they are big in Austria, I think. I'm not sure actually. But yeah, anyway, I wouldn't still, I think. The list could go on and on. Think of times when something might have happened sexually, times when you have been keeping things repressed, and times with our families. Because our families, we love them, but at the same time, we don't talk about things. So we don't talk about a family member who has been using drugs or abusing alcohol. We don't talk about a family member who might have several mental illness. We'll say something like, oh, they've always been that way. And we hope that in not talking about it and not acknowledging it, we can act like it doesn't exist, that it will somehow fix itself. Your goal is to write down at least 10 things, and once you have those 10 things, you've actually done part 1, which is to bear witness. You have unsilenced something that you have been keeping silent, which is a good thing. The second step is, or the second part is, narrow it down and focus. What I suggest is going back to your list of 10 and picking 3 things that are really tugging at you, 3 things that you feel strongly about. It doesn't have to be the most traumatic things, but it's things that are like, I have to write about this. I suggest you sit down at a table with a pen and paper. That is my preferred method for recording, but you can also use a tablet, an iPad, or a computer, just something that lets you write. I suggest taking 30 minutes of uninterrupted time, meaning that you turn your phone off or put it in airplane mode, no email. If you have family or if you have children, give yourself 20 minutes or 5 minutes. The goal is to just give yourself time to write. However long it might be, just give yourself time to write. You're going to focus on 3 things. You're going to focus on the details, you're going to focus on the order of events, and you're going to focus on how it made you feel. The last one is the most important one. I'm going to talk you through how I do it. The first thing I feel very, very strongly about is the time when a couple of months after 9/11, these 2 boys dared themselves to touch me. I remember I was in a rural mall in North Carolina, and I was just walking, minding my business. I felt like people walking behind me were very, very close, and I was like, okay, that's kind of weird. Let me walk a little bit faster. They walked a little bit faster too, and I heard them going back and forth. No, you do it. You do it. No, you do it. Which is, don't fucking do that. And then one of them pushed me and I almost fell to the ground. What the fuck? I popped back up expecting some type of apology, and the weirdest thing was they did not run away. They actually stood right next to me, and I remember there was a guy with blonde hair and had a bright red polo shirt, and he was saying, "Give me my money." I did it, man. And the guy with the brown hair who had a chubby haircut gave him a $5 bill. I remember I was crumbled, and so I'm like, am I still standing here? This thing just happened. What just happened? And it was so weird to be someone's dare and then also not exist at all. I remembered when I was younger and someone dared me to touch something nasty or disgusting. I felt like that nasty and disgusting thing. A second thing I feel very, very strongly about is the time when a friend pulled a gun on me. I should say former friend. I remember there was a group of us outside. He had run up and he had the stereotypical brown paper bag in his hands. I knew what it was. I'm a very mouthy person. I started going off. I was like, what are you doing with that gun? You're not gonna shoot anyone. You're a coward. Well, I don't really think that this is kind of the best thing to say to somebody that has a gun. Because, I mean, they are gonna just prove it to themselves, more or less. You don't even know how to use it. It kept going on and on and on, and he got angrier and angrier and angrier, and he pulled the gun out and put it in my face. I remember every one of us got very, very quiet. I remember the tightness of his face. I remember the barrel of the gun, and I felt like, and I'm pretty sure everyone around me who got quiet did too, felt like this is the moment I die. The third thing I feel very, very strongly about is the going away luncheon and this big boss. I remember I was running late, and I'm always late. Well, super. It's just the thing that happens with me. The whole table was filled except for the seat next to me. I didn't know him well. I had seen him in the office. I didn't know why the seat was empty. I found out later on why. So I sat down on the table, and before he even asked me my name, the first thing he said was, "What's going on with all of this?" And he gestured at my head. I thought, do I have something on my face? What is happening? Then he asked me with two hands this time, what was going on with all of this? And I realized that he's talking about my hijab. Oh, in my head I said, oh, not today. But he is a big boss. He's like my boss's boss. So for 45 minutes I put up with him asking me where I was from, where my parents are from or were from, my grandparents. He asked me where I went to school, where I did my internships. He asked me who interviewed me for that job, and 45 minutes I tried to be very, 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 very polite, trying to answer his questions. But I remember I was making eyeball help signs at the people around the table, like someone say something, intervene. It was a rectangular table, so there were people on both sides of us, and no one said anything. Even people who might be in a position to do so, bosses, no one said anything. I remember I felt so alone. I remember I felt like I didn't deserve to be in the space. I remember I wanted to quit. So these are my three things, and you'll have your list of three things. Once you have these three things, you have the details, and you have the order of events, you have how it made you feel. You're ready to actually use creative writing to bear witness. Very interesting so far, and very fucked up stories, to be honest. Just because you're having a hijab or hijab, I'm very sorry if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. I don't know, who gives a fuck? Who gives a fuck? Of course, I can understand elderly people that are like, well, this hasn't been a case for me just my whole entire life long, and it is something new, and I have to get used to it, and it is something strange. But it is not always the case, first of all. And second of all, change is always going to be a part of life. And so we should, and it is about fucking human beings. Like, come on. Step 3, pick one and tell your story. You don't have to write a memoir. You don't have to be a creative writer. I know sometimes storytelling can be daunting for some people, but we are human. We are natural storytellers. If someone asks, how is your day going? We have a beginning, a middle, and an end. That is a narrative. Our memory exists and subsides through the act of storytelling. You just have to find a form that works for you. You can write a letter to your younger self. You can write a story to your younger self. You can write a story to your 5-year-old child. You can write a parody, a song as parody. You can write a play. You can write a nursery rhyme, and you can write it in the form of a Wikipedia article. It is one of those situations where you saw something and you didn't intervene. Perhaps write it from that person's perspective. So if I go back to the boy on the train who I saw being beaten, what was it like to be in his shoes? What was it like to see all of these people who watched it happen and did nothing? Or I could put myself in a position of someone who was homeless and just try to figure out how they got there in the first place, which I, by the way, think is a very important thing because it is very empathetic, and just noticing how life is being them sounds very good and sounds very pleasant, I think. Well, not pleasant in that sense, but I think it makes sense. Perhaps it would help me change some of my actions. Perhaps it will help me be more proactive and about certain things. By telling a story, you're keeping it alive, so you don't have to do anything. You don't have to show anyone any of these steps. But even if you're telling it to yourself, you're saying this thing happened. This weird thing did happen. It is not in my head. It actually happened. And by doing that, maybe you'll take a little bit of power back that has been taken away, which I think is definitely going to be the case. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you my story. The one I've picked is about this big boss, and I picked that one because I feel like I'm not the only person who has been in a position where someone has been above me and been talked down to me. I feel like all of us might have been in positions where we felt like we could not say anything because this person has our livelihood, our paychecks, our jobs in their hands, and times we might have seen someone who has power talking down to someone, and we should have or could have intervened. By telling the story, I'm taking back a little bit of power that was taken away from me, and I have changed the names, and it happened a decade ago. I'm sorry. It doesn't have any happy ending because it's just me writing down what happened that day. Because there's not always going to be a happy ending, whatever you're doing. This is how I use creative writing to bear witness at Lisa going away luncheon. I think it is a rhyme, and I hope that I'm going to read it correctly. I want to ask my boss's boss if he's stupid or just plain dumb after he takes one look at my hijab or hijab and asks me where I'm from in Southeast Asia. I tell him that it's New Jersey, actually, and he asks where are my parents from, and my grandparents and my great-grandparents, and their parents and their parents' parents, as if searching for some other blood, as if searching for some reason why some black. Muslim girl from New York or Newark wound up seated next to him, and this restaurant of tablecloths and laminated menus. I want to say slavery jerk, but I've got a car note and rent and insurances and credit, cards and credit debt and a loan and both tooth and a peckin for sushi, so I drop the jerk but keep the truth. Tell me, he says, why don't Sunnis and Shiites get along? Tell me, he says, what is going on in Iraq or Iraq? Tell me, he says, what is up with Saudi and Syria and Iran? Tell me, he says, why do Muslims like bombs? I want to shove an M1 up his behind and confetti that past the flesh and that tailored suit. Instead, I'm sipping my unsweetened iced tea, looking around at the table at the co-workers. Around me, none of whom, not one, looks back at me. Rather, they do the most American things they can do. They praise their Lord, they stuff their faces, and pretend they don't hear him, and pretend they don't see me. And yes, it is actually a woman of color. And I want to point out, just because I'm reading it, Sakina Hofler, and I'm probably pronouncing this incorrectly, and I'm very sorry for that, is an award-winning writer and a PhD student at the University of Cincinnati at the English program. Formerly, she worked as a chemical and quality engineer for the United States Department of Defense. So fuck you. She's an advocate for infusing the arts into our daily lives. So whoever says something like, just because, I don't know, like some racist shit, fuck you. There's just a ton, just so many people of color that are doing just something that's so fucking amazing. So fuck off. By the way, I don't know if it did rhyme from time to time, or I've just really poorly read it. This could also be the case, which is probably going to be the case. So I'm very sorry for that. This piece of art. Yeah. Maybe I should also read one of my things. Let me have a look. Can I please open it? Can you see this? Well, you can actually see this. I didn't think about it. And there's also a lot of just notes. Being fed up with shit, only thinking about it, trying to live without it because we can do so much. Whatever we touch can be amazing. Sometimes it feels like a maze we are in or have been. Deep within, we know what we are capable of doing. Brewing the best beer, renewing our career, canoeing every year. My dear friends, I believe in you through and through. This is one that I've written, I think 2 days ago or something. I like writing poems. I like writing something that rhymes. I don't know. I think it is a good way to just express things that I'm thinking about and to just think about things. It's also more fun than just writing something down, and it kind of incorporates like more thought. And I like when things come together and when just things work out quite. But yeah, thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. I just truly hope that I've been able to just share some things that are of importance and that that makes sense. The next episode is also going to be quite amazing. I really am looking forward to that. But yeah, I wish you the best health of happiness and success, and also hope that you're going to remind yourself you're going to be remembered, which basically means your legacy and basically means just being a nice person and also being remembered as a nice person. And I wish you the best from the bottom of my heart. I can't tell you how much I wish you that. And I can't tell you how much I wish this to actually everybody. And I don't know. I'm sorry. I sometimes feel like that there is a lot of love that I want to give and that I can give, but, well, there's actually a rhyme that I figured out. A lot of love to give, but too less people to share it with. Kinda. This is, well, yeah. Thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. 3 other questions that I have of you are: why are you here? What are you trying to change and what is bothering you the most? These 3 questions are hopefully going to show you your purpose and maybe even a business idea, which is a pretty fucking cool thing. Yeah, another question that I'm having for you is: what could you particularly say that is really going to change somebody's life, that is really going to change how somebody is living their life, and so on? Because I really hope that you're doing so, and I really hope that you're just taking the effort and just give one compliment to somebody and be like, well, I appreciate the work and I appreciate the hustle. I appreciate your shoes. I appreciate that jacket. You are just having a nice face. You're just really gifted with the proportions of your body. You're one of the nicest people that I've ever met. You're so empathetic. Yeah, please do that. And thank you from the bottom of my heart once again.